So permit me to start by commending the initiative taken by the Department of Communications in collaboration with the University of St. Martin in organizing this lecture series under the theme, The Law Matters to You. Efforts like this one are bound not only to enlighten the public, but also to bring government even closer to the people. I sincerely hope that the discussions and conclusions that would be reached during this series of lectures starting today would effectively be disseminated to a wider public so that everyone can benefit from the knowledge and wisdom of the lecturers and of all the participants in this important series. The theme of this lecture series asserts what should be common knowledge: the law matters to you. Of course it does. Why then have a series of lectures about this subject? Could we simply get up and go home and leave the law alone, or at least let the lawyers worry about that? But the more you think about it, the more you realize that it is a much more serious topic than the statement itself suggests. The first and perhaps most important question that comes to mind with respect to the theme is, what is the law? Is it, as Jonathan Swift said, like a cobweb, which may catch some small flies, but let wasps and hornets break through? So much for the idea of law for one and law for all. Is it what is codified in volumes upon volumes of mysterious books, accessible only to a group of professionals who we call lawyers? Or is it what the people accept and obey? Is Martin Luther King right when he said, an unjust law is no law at all? Or can we agree with Immanuel Kant's view that the touchstone of everything that can be concluded as a law for a people lies in the question whether the people could have imposed such a law on itself? I pose these questions because I believe we all agree that laws are necessary in every society so that we don't descend into chaos and barbarity. In fact, we often hear that one of the cornerstones of a democracy is the rule of law. Is it really? Or is just another instrument of power in the hands of a privileged few who lord it over the masses? Some scholars have described what they call rule of law as the conscience of society, the essence of what we believe to be right or wrong, developed over millennia into a code of justice that regulates what can be considered acceptable behavior in a civilized society. However, what is the link between law and justice, between law and morality, between law and ethics? How is the law enacted? How is it enforced? And more importantly, how is it elaborated? Recent developments in the political arena on St. Martin have made almost every one of us a constitutional expert, which is not a bad thing, except that some lawyers befrown at the idea that laymen and laywomen seemingly want to usurp their field of expertise. The battle unleashed not too long ago by advocates of Article 59 and of Article 33 of the St. Martin Constitution resulted in a standoff that has polarized our population and damage the image of politics and politicians while revealing the imperfections of the law. You will recall that I recently received the report of the Electoral Reform Committee, which was set up to address some of these issues before the next elections. Similarly, the ongoing criminal investigation dubbed Octopus has made the issue of vote buying a legal and political one. The intersection of law and politics is therefore another area which I hope this lecture series would shed some light on. Then there is that fundamental premise of our criminal justice system guaranteed in our Constitution, that all accused persons are deemed innocent until proven guilty by an irrevocable decision of the court. However, we all know that in practice, the general attitude of the average St. Martiner is that once detectives search your home in an investigation or the police picks you up for questioning, the assumption is that you must have done something wrong. In other words, that you are guilty of something. Perhaps we need to be reminded of the words of John Adams, who said, "It is more important that innocence be protected than it is that guilt be punished." Against this backdrop, it is pertinent to ask, should a law matter to you? Should it matter to me? Or should it matter to us? I would assume that the unanimous answer would be an emphatic yes. But then how? I am particularly concerned that we do not have enough public involvement in the elaboration and passage of laws that affect our daily lives. We do not engage in much debate before laws are passed. Rather, laws are presented to us, the community, as a fait accompli, which we have to live with. Then we are told it is the law, which translates basically into shut up and put up. Another area of concern to all of us should be those laws we have inherited, but which do not reflect our own moral and cultural values, and which sometimes even go against them. The law on the age of sexual consent comes to mind in this respect. In conclusion, let me remind all of us about the golden rule. Ignorance of the law is no excuse in a court of law. Is there any better reason why the law should matter to you? I thank you.
Let me begin by thanking some persons. I believe these persons are usually thanked at the end. I would like to start by thanking them at the beginning. It is the persons of Dcomm and the event manager and the other persons at the USM, the Dean of Academics, that have worked hard to actually pull this off. I think they deserve a round of applause. Now, briefly, there are three reasons why we as the USM decided to participate and be part of this. The first reason is, of course, that in every society people have to have factual information. Before they wish to change anything, they have to understand how the law institutions function, what is written in the law books, why they're written up in that way, and then you can decide how you wish to change that. I think factual information is important. That's the first reason. The second reason is actually that I consider this symbolic and revolutionary, what is taking place here. It has to do with the fact that for emancipated people, people who are going through the emancipation, the first things they do is become school teachers. That's the first thing that people do. Secondly, they become lawyers. That's the second thing they do. But when they become lawyers, something strange happened in the Caribbean. They actually got cut off from the rest of society. So Michael Manley, the others in Grenada, they became lawyers, but they got cut off from society. What is taking place here on St. Martin, and therefore I have to commend the government, is actually that for the first time in the Caribbean, the law will be accessible to everyone. So every cook can govern, so which means the cleaning lady to the person who has a high degree, they will be able to learn about the law. They will be able to come to the university to actually get acquainted, and they will be able to learn about it via YouTube, via the CSI program of Mama's Pearl, and via the Government Information Service. I think that is important. That's the second reason why this is remarkable. The third reason is, and it's related to that, it is an exercise in our democratic tradition, a democratic tradition in the making. If you wish to be a democracy, you actually have to be a democracy 600 or 365 days of a year. That means a popular democracy. That means a democracy where people have a say, and people can only have a say if they have the correct information and if they can be heard, regardless of what they actually have in their pocketbooks. I believe these are the three reasons why the university decided to participate in this law course. I thank you.
I have been asked by Dcomm and by the university to start with this series, and it wouldn't make sense to start and talking about the abstracts, visions of law, if we don't just come back home and start where we are, in this just beautiful island of St. Martin. Talking about the court and the legal system starts with our flag. Within the center, the courthouse, and with this beautiful motto, Semper Progrediens, always progressing. And each progress starts with a first step, and this is the first, as has been mentioned already. The first step, indeed, of further emancipation, furthering further knowledge of our law system, of our legal system. Further on the series, certain subjects will be dealt in depth, probably about criminal laws, about property laws, about tax laws, but we should understand in which scope this all happens. So for many of you, I was a bit scared when I saw like an old colleague of mine, Mr. Manning. He's a judge. I see the chairman here, chair lady of Parliament. She makes the law. What I should be telling anything. I see the dean, welcome. They know everything. And still I was asked, certainly in view of this project, also to make it accessible to all. So I will be speaking in general terms. Those learned minds, please bear with me and help me by asking questions in order to be more clear on certain subjects. Yes? So here we start in St. Martin. Always progressing, and the first steps are taken. And what system do we have in St. Martin? We are proud of it. We have heard already about the report, about electoral reform. So that means elections are in the air. We are, and that is important, what they call in Dutch a democratische rechtsstaat, a democratic society. Democratisch en rechtsstaat. A state where the rule of law is predominant. But what does it mean? What does democracy mean? Who wants to tell me? Who wants to give it a try? The government for the people, by the people. Government? Government? What elections are we having? Parliament elections. So shouldn't be parliament for the people and by the people? Well, if it was a direct democracy we should all be members of parliament. But our constitution says it is an indirect democracy. Why indirect? That doesn't make it less democratic. It is because our constitution says that 15 members of parliament will be chosen to represent us, the people. And each member of parliament should bear in mind when looking into a law, presenting a law, making proposals to change a law, and finally accepting the law, that the interest of all should be considered, of the majority, but also that of the minority. You mustn't think, oh, this judge is naive. It's only the majority they will be considering. I don't want to agree with you. Because our system is also based on the rule of law. His Excellency, the Prime Minister, already mentioned it. But what is that? We see all these three. What are the correct characteristics? The rule of law means we have a written constitution. The most highest of that is the Statute, the Kingdom Charter. The highest in the country of St. Martin, the Staatsregeling, the Constitution of St. Martin. It is written. Has anyone read it? Does anyone know where you can just get a copy? On the website? Very good. Which website?
Government's website.
Sorry?
Government's website.
Government's website. I saw it yesterday too, and preparing on the website of Parliament. Very nice. In both languages, Dutch and English. Which languages are, by the way, the official languages of this country. In one of the first articles of the Constitution, it's determined. Now we'll come to that further on what it means for fetching your rights in court. Don't forget that. We see what is another characteristics, division of power. Trias politica. Seems as if we're in church. Very Latin. Father, welcome. Father Adam also as well is here. He wants to know about the civil laws, besides the church laws. And this society, based on its system, has to respect human rights, both those classical and social. But what is, and still, these are characteristics. But what does that entice? What does that rule of law entice? The Prime Minister said in his speech, yes, it is a reflection of rules that has gradually has come to be. Probably also reflections of ethics and morale during the that should correctly said reflect that what is of this country, of the people of this country. The basic thing about the rule of law is that it protects all. It is written, accessible to all. And it also says something about the authority. If we want to protect life, we have a rule of law in the criminal code stating you are not allowed to kill. So now we have a suspect, and the police come and arrest you. What does that entice? Being a suspect, correctly said, doesn't mean you have already been convicted. And when I arrest you as a policeman, Mr. John, please guide me here. Can I come and rush you up, brush you up, hit you just to arrest you? Would it suffice to probably invite you to the police station? We need to talk. So this rule of law says we should know what is not allowed. It should be accessible. We should know it is written somewhere. We should know what the risks are. If you kill many, you might remain for life in prison. Before you're convicted, there are certain rights. Like, for example, you need a lawyer. A lawyer could be paid by the state, by the country for you. And eventually, you should have a fair trial. And if you don't agree, you can appeal and even go to the Supreme Court. So it gives you guidance in order to protect your rights. So we can have all these very nice human rights mentioned in our Constitution, but if we don't know how to have these rights protected and guarded, it doesn't make sense. So then we can call ourselves a democratic society based on the rule of law, but if we don't know it, and that's why the law matters to you, it's that letter. Yes, we can have nice Constitution. We can find it on the website. We can read about Queen Juliana, who has signed the Kingdom Charter. But if you don't know anything about it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. So that is why it is very commendable what Dcomm and the university is doing, is to, in small baby steps and in very general terms, try to make it accessible and to understand what you read in the newspapers. It has to start living and understand where to put things in which square. With doing that, we all are becoming critical citizens. So not only the Chair Lady of Parliament have to deal with those members in Parliament, but we'll have all of us as members of this democracy. That's the whole idea. So, as I said before, one of the characteristics is the trias politica. The powers divided. It's all about division of powers, and why is it? To prevent abuse of power and arbitrariness. Thus, these terms, they are known to all of you, to many of you. What would have happened if there was no division of powers as we have it in this country? We would have a dictatorship. There will be no peace, could be. There will be chaos. I don't know, if I read stories about the kings in the Middle Ages, they like to fight, but they like a war, but I think that was their Olympic Games. No, just imagine, we were talking about it with my colleagues. Just imagine if we had a dictator who had all these powers that we will be talking about in one hand. Let's say Mr. Richardson is our dictator. And he establishes a new rule and he says all buildings on St. Martin may not be higher than 5 meters. Then his lovely niece comes and says, "Oh, uncle, I want to build this beautiful building, but it's 6 meters. Well, the neighbor of that little niece will be happy. And where does the neighbor goes? Again, to the dictator. And says, "Yes, but you have put your rule yourself." "Yes, but I decide upon that it's okay this time. It's reasonable." And who will control if the niece builds 10 meters? The same Mr. Richardson. So in order to have this balance of power, the idea, many of you might have heard about the neighbor on the French side, Mr. Montesquieu, who came with this idea of trias politica, to divide the powers in the executive, the legislative, and the judicial power. And guess what? It's all mentioned in our Constitution. About the government, you can read about it in Chapter 3, Paragraph 1. About the legislative power in Chapter 4, and about the judicial in Chapter 7. It's all mentioned there. So we have it well organized and well regulated. So, who is at the head of our legislative power? What is the legislative power in St. Martin? Yeah, I hear some learned minds. They are trying to mess my presentation. Some says yes, government. Yes, but the first institute that comes to mind when it comes to the legislative, that is Parliament. We have the personification of Parliament in our midst. Huh? The chairlady. The Parliament can propose new laws, and indeed also government can make proposals, and eventually will be looked upon and agreed upon by Parliament. Very important. And by doing so, they have again taken into consideration all those human rights mentioned in the Charter, mentioned in our Constitution, and all the other things that has to be looked upon. And before it got that far, guess what? We have Vice Chair Lady of Council of State that will look upon that it's all in accordance to our system. And advice is given by the Council of Advice. But eventually, it is the legislative power, Parliament, that will have to agree upon those laws. So great, we have those laws. And then? What happens then? We have a new law. Tell me about a new law. Do we have any new laws in St. Martin, Madam Chair Lady?